we go.
Okay, awesome.
Proceed.
All righty, so let's get started then. Since there's only, two of us, what we'll do is we will kind of make this interactive so that
Okay.
you guys, can ask questions. There is a series of educational workshops that we do, everything from budgeting to retirement to estate planning. The Association of Financial Educators is basically an organization that provides complimentary training for companies and their employees, as well as we do it for other organizations, so it doesn't necessarily need to be employees, where we're basically teaching people about finances, things that they should consider at different levels. So from the most basic to, some complex topics, but just to kind of provide the information that you need in order to make good financial decisions. We are starting to do some workshops specifically for kids in high school that are going to be graduating, that have never had a checkbook before and have no idea what credit is. So that's a new space that we're kind of getting into. So the series that we're going to do today is specifically on budgeting. So we want to learn, basically, we're going to talk about the importance of tracking your money, understanding where it goes, and how to position it so that it works best for you. So the objectives of what we're covering today, basically to learn the facts about money, to track spending, to understand expenses, to really distinguish the difference between wants and needs, and to make a budget. One of the things that we've seen is that the biggest problem that most people have when it comes to money is they know how to spend it, they don't know how to track it. It's very disorganized. And so you might be overpaying for things that you don't know that you're overpaying for because you never really sit down and look at your expenses and kind of say, well, where were we last month versus this month? We're also in a big world of auto pay where everything is automatic because it's easier. And a lot of times auto pay, you don't realize that you're really not using this service, but you're continuing to pay for it every month. So these are kind of pitfalls that people land in, and it's areas of opportunity where if they spent a little bit of time actually looking at their expenses and monitoring and tracking them, they can reallocate that money to something that's going to be more beneficial. So we understand that every person and every household has obviously a different situation. They might have limited amount of money despite of income, or you have people that get paid great, but they're cash poor. And then you'll have people that don't really make a lot of money, but they don't spend anything. So they have this bucket of savings that they don't know what to do with. So this was built very generalized to kind of be effective for everybody, regardless of what situation you're in. And one of the things that we're going to do is really learn, how to prioritize, how to understand not only what to buy now, what to buy later, what you can do without, understanding what you should borrow for and what you shouldn't. So we're going to take a look at, your budget, your money in the future. Managing your money is a lot easier than most people think. It just does take a little bit of time and effort on the part of the person who's trying to manage their funds. And you can reach your goals, but the thing with goals is that they have to fit. You have to be able to write them down. They have to be manageable. You have to be able to track them. So it's not just saying arbitrarily, hey, I want to take a vacation. You have to be specific about what your goal is so that you can set it up in a way that it's attainable. And obviously we want to avoid unnecessary debt if possible. And that's one of the biggest things that we found, especially with people that are not really financially savvy, is that it's very easy to get into debt that is unnecessary. A lot of times someone will tell you, you came to the store, you can buy this and you get it for 0% interest, but then it goes up and you're thinking, okay, well, I had the money, but I'm just going to take the credit because it's easier. You end up passing the time period, and now you're paying all of this interest that you weren't considering before. And whatever you purchased is already 12 months old. So things like that can affect, your debt versus what you actually have. So we're going to take a close look at financial obligations and current spending, determine overhead costs and fixed expenses. This is another big one. What is discretionary? What is non-discretionary? What's a fixed cost and what isn't a fixed cost? So your fixed expenses are things like your housing, your utilities, electric, gas, phone, cable, water, all of the things that are necessary for you to live your day-to-day life. And then along with that is your outstanding debt. This is important because most people, especially looking at last year when we had some financial situations where people were either furloughed or lost their jobs, they really did not, you kind of look at your outstanding debt payments as, well, I obviously need to eat and I need electricity, so I'm going to focus on those things. And if I can't pay my outstanding debt, then I won't pay my outstanding debt, which is logical. But you want to try, even when you get into those tough situations, to set up a way where you can pay something to those outstanding debts, because obviously that's going to impact your credit and then your future ability to purchase things that you want to purchase. Things like daycare and tuition are obviously fixed expenses as well. You need to work, so you have to send your kids somewhere, and that's something that you're going to have to pay for. Things like insurance, whether it's homeowners insurance or your auto insurance and your mortgage, and then your transportation expenses. If you have a car, your car payment, these really make up what are your fixed expenses. This is kind of your non-discretionary stuff. You can't live without these. That doesn't mean that you can't improve them. So just looking at this list, if you look at your cable, if you look at your phone bill and you revisit what you actually pay for, you may be able to eliminate stuff to reduce those fixed expenses. The same thing with your insurance. A lot of times, I've been with Geico for almost 20 years. The thought of pricing Geico out is crazy to me. I've been with them for such a long time, and that's the wrong train of thought, because I might be able to go somewhere else and actually lower my insurance just by moving providers. Mortgage or your homeowner's insurance is the same thing. So it's important to understand that fixed expenses doesn't mean that you cannot change them. There are ways to improve your fixed expenses, to lower them, and then now take that money that you've saved and reallocate it to your retirement or to your savings account or to your emergency fund. So while these are fixed and they're necessary and they need to be part of your budget every month, that doesn't mean that you cannot reduce them. So when we look at variable expenses, this is your clothes, your food, your entertainment, gifts, and celebrations. Obviously, there is a certain need for some of these things, but that doesn't mean that you need them every single month. So you're not buying clothes every month. Your entertainment, you can, obviously reduce spending there. With food, eating in versus eating out is going to make a huge difference. The same thing with gifts and celebrations. So your variable expenses are really your discretionary expenses. And these are more the things that you can live without, or at least you can alter and kind of work them differently so that you're spending less in your variable expenses. So the choices that we face are determining whether the stuff on our list is necessary or not. We've found that in 2020, internet was necessary because everybody was working from home. So you need to have a way to be able to access your computer and work from home. Cable TV was necessary because you couldn't go anywhere. Usually cable TV is one of those things that you have that you can say, well, I'll get a basic package. I really don't have time to watch TV anyway. I'm working, 16, 17 hours. But when you're basically on lockdown, cable is one of those things that in 2020 was on the top of things that are important. Do you really need to get a manicure every 2 weeks? Do you need to buy a new car, or can you work with the car that you have? And then looking at vacations, budgeting doesn't mean that you have to change your life to the point where you do nothing and all you're doing is trying to save. Everything is about balance. And what a budget does is it allows you to balance your life so that you have all of your fixed needs and you can plan out for your wants in a way that still allows you to enjoy life, but to put the money away that you need to put away. So when you're looking at things like going out to eat, concerts, new clothes, stuff of that nature, those are all things that we have to decide, is this necessary at this time, or is this just a luxury? So your wants versus your needs are just that. Understanding the difference between necessity and desire. That's going to help you manage your spending. When you do an actual budget, and after this call, tomorrow, I'll send you some of the actual material that goes with this. There is an actual budget worksheet that helps people go through the different types of or line items that are a part of a budget. And it's specific to, okay, these are your needs. So let's talk about all of those discretionary things. How much do you pay for them a month? And then your wants. And that's going to visually help you determine how to manage your spending. And then obviously controlling your budget means making good decisions. There's never going to be enough money for everything that you need and you want, unless you're, Beyonce that has zero problems with money. But for us normal people, we need to, sometimes you need to prioritize. Is going on vacation more important than, buying a boat? So just even with your wants and having those goals and prioritizing them is important. So I like this chart because when you talk to people about, well, just don't drink coffee every day and you'll see that you can put money away. They look at you like you have 4 heads. So this kind of puts it in a way, it puts it in perspective because you actually see it. And by the way, the last time I went to Starbucks and its coffee cost $3.50 was probably when Starbucks opened. So this isn't even close to where we're at. But when you look at it, what it's telling you is, when you think about it or when you say it out loud, yeah, 1 cup of coffee is $3.50. Most people are like, what is saving $3.50 going to do for me? But if you're doing it on a consistent basis, so 7 days a week, you're doing this, and now you're doing it 365 days, it adds up. And some of these things will add up to thousands of dollars a year, especially if you're doing all of them together at some point in the day. So if you're having Starbucks in the morning and then you're going to lunch and you're spending money on lunch and then you're a smoke, when you add all of this up, you could easily find $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 that you spent on stuff that was unnecessary, that you could have put towards your retirement. You could have put towards your kids' education. You could have put towards, your savings for a new home. So when you say it, it kind of sounds a little funny because it's like, really, not spending money on a cup of coffee is going to make a difference. But when you look at it long term, it does. So one of the things when you're budgeting is making those decisions to really cut out the fat when you don't need it, regardless of how small it sounds, because you have to look at it as a culmination of the entire year's worth of spending for that small item. So alternative options to scaling back expenses. Some of these are a little hokey, so forgive me. It's a candid presentation. It's just generic. So obviously you can do public transportation, you can carpool. We have seen, in the last year, a lot of people have saved a lot of money on things like gas because they're not commuting. They were working from home. So we do anticipate, and this is just from a financial advisor standpoint, not necessarily from this presentation, but we do anticipate that a lot of companies, especially large companies, are taking this time to restructure and are seriously considering having a good portion of their workforce continue to work from home. So That in of itself, if you happen to land in that space where you do get the option of either continuing to work from home or maybe splitting your time 50-50, taking all of that gas money that you're saving, all of those tune-ups that you're saving, the tolls that you're saving, and reallocating that money is part of the whole budgeting process. So, downgrading utility bills, things like your phone expenses and your cable, those kind of things. Obviously, going to free events. No one's grinding their own coffee, so we're gonna skip over that one. Cooking your own meals and shopping at discount stores. This one's important because what people don't realize is, usually the coupon clipper has a really bad rap. It's, the lady that stands at the checkout at Publix and brings out her box with her 14,000 coupons that she's trying to make sure work. But apps and the internet have really changed that. You can get discounts on anything and everything your heart desires. So even some of those wants, those vacations, it is important to look for what is going to be the most beneficial for you from a monetary standpoint. And you'd be surprised how much you can actually save by having an app for your grocery shopping or having an app for when you do eat out. It is quite a significant difference, especially if you track it. So I know it kind of sounds a little hokey, but it is one of those things that people should start to consider to do, because $2, $5, $10, $15 here and there every day does add up, and it does make a difference. So the secret to financial success is really understanding how to learn how to live within your income and your budget. Obviously, your income is one of those things that you don't really have that much control over, in the sense that your job is going to pay you a certain amount of money. You kind of expect some raises at some point in time. If you were to move from one place to another, you might obviously get a bump up, but your income kind of is what it is. However, your budget, you do have 100% control of, because this is where you can come in and make some tweaks to make sure that you're covering all of your fixed expenses and still have some money left over for savings and things of that nature. So the key steps to establishing and managing your budget are: number one, you got to identify all your sources of income and calculate your take home money. A lot of people make the mistake of saying, I make $50,000 a year, and assuming that they're going to get $50,000 a year, or budgeting as if they were getting $50,000 a year. And as you and I both know, when you get your paycheck, it's minus, 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 and then minus. So you have to take that into consideration when you're doing your budget. How much are you actually taking home? And then build your budget around that. You need to track all of your spending for the month. I always advise people, have one credit card that is a monthly credit card. That is what you're using to do all of your expenses that are your fixed expenses and the stuff that you do on a normal basis, on a monthly basis. Go ahead and use that card and then pay it off at the end of the month. If you're not one of these people that's into spreadsheets, you're not going to sit down and track every dollar that you spent. Doing it that way, the card tracks it for you. So if, for example, I have an American Express. I have two of them, one for my business and one for my personal expenditures. And every month I look at, okay, well, how much did I spend? And it will give me a breakdown of what I spent it on. Was it entertainment? Was it, tuition? What was, and it allows me to see, okay, this month, why am I $200, $400, $600 over last month? So the budget is important because that's what's going to help you keep on, stay on track. But if you're not one of these people that's disciplined, that's a kind of a good life hack, is to have a card specific for your monthly expenditures. And then obviously deciding what you want and what you need, and reevaluating that, especially at different times in your life. So obviously you're going to have different needs and wants now or today than you're going to have 5 years from now, than you're going to have 10, or when you retire. So it's important to not have those kind of needs or goals be stagnant. You have to update them based on where your life is. Create a spending plan that's realistic. What I tell people is, take 3 months of experience. So track your spending for at least 3 months, so that you can then go back and you actually have data to use to create a realistic spending plan. Because now you're seeing what you're spending money on, and you can determine, okay, I can live without that, but I can't live without this. Whereas if you just did the plan, maybe your assumption is you could live without it, and it turns out you can't, and now you're over your budget. And then live within your income. Don't use your MasterCard to pay your Visa. That's probably a bad idea. So living within your income is important. It's great to have things, but if they're not a necessity, it's much more important to make sure that you have things like emergency reserves. COVID hit, no one knew it or saw it coming. That can happen at any time, any year. So you want to have at least 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency account that's liquid. That's super important. Most people don't have a good handle of what an emergency fund should look like. If you have a job that is a higher ranking job, or is specialized, or is going to be harder for you to replace if you were to lose your job today, then you should really have more than 6 months liquid as an emergency reserve fund. If you have a job that is relatively easy for you to, in 3 months you can find another job, not an issue, then you're looking at about 3 to 6. If you're on commissions or bonuses and you don't have a fixed income amount that comes in every month, then you should have 6 months or more. So really, your emergency fund, everyone needs to have one, but how it looks depends on what your income structure is today, and also how difficult will it be to get another job at that same level should something happen. So that's kind of the basics of what this is. This was one of our, we're talking about budgeting 101, but it just kind of gives you the fundamentals. And then the subsequent course to this actually goes through a budget. So we actually look at it, look at the line items. We discuss which ones are fixed, which ones are not. You get taught how to fill out the budget, how to determine your income, and then how to track your budget. And we also do a whole portion specifically on credit. So that one's a little bit more advanced to this particular workshop, but this just covers, the basics and the fundamentals of budgeting.
Okay.
Good stuff. I know some nonprofits that help families out that could really use some of this, especially when they start getting a big lump sum. You got a husband, wife, a couple kids, and all